and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Happy Halloween to you, and if you're not Catholic, you're welcome. Yes, Catholic Church invented Halloween. We're happy to share, but credit where credit is due, and no, a big no to those of you who are yelling at the radio. Halloween is not a pagan festival appropriated by the Catholic Church. We hear that about just about every Christian holiday, and it's in almost every case not true. We have a great show for you this All Hallows Eve, starting with a conversation about crisis moments in the history of the Church. Without question, we're living through tough times right now, almost certainly one of the crisis moments in the history of the Church. So we take a look back today at how the Church has responded to crises throughout the many centuries. Our number, 888-318-7884. If you would like to get in on that conversation, we'd love to have you. 888-318-7884. Our guest is Dr. Italy, Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio. He hosts a series on EWTN on the virtues, 7 Habits of Champions. He received his doctorate in theology under Cardinal Avery Dulles of blessed memory. A prolific writer and speaker, Dr. D'Ambrosio's books include Exploring the Catholic Church, When the Church Was Young, Voices of the Early Fathers, and 40 Days, 40 Ways, a new look at Lent. You can find all about him at dritaly.com. Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio, thank you for being with us.
It is a pleasure to be with you, Si. It's been a while, man.
It has been a while, and I'm so pleased to have you back. And this is kind of not new territory for you. I mean, among the talks that you give is a talk about the crisis moments in the history of this church.
Yes, indeed. And you know what, Si? Every talk I've given, and I've given a lot since August, but just about everybody wants me at least to mention the elephant in the room, and that is the crisis that we're all grappling with.
Right.
That's, the one thing after another, the disclosures about Cardinal McCarrick, and then the PA District Attorney report coming out, and then, Archbishop Vigano's letters. So anyway, we've been we're a little rope-a-dope here. Been hit. Everybody who loves the church is dismayed, and those who don't love the church are dismayed. It doesn't matter. It's not a happy spectacle. So yeah,
right.
It's something that needs to be addressed, and I've been addressing it ever since it's been coming up so much since August.
So probably, real as far as crises go, the church, was did pretty good for maybe the first 1,000 years, 1,500 years, right? There were no real crises early in the life of the church. That's when everything was rosy and good.
Everything was perfect.
Okay.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm so glad you got that straight, Si.
Yeah, I'm a real historian.
Yeah, it's really important to know that issues with clergy and crisis with clergy, disedifying, scandalous behavior, goes back to the Old Testament times. I mean, if people pick up their Bible, read 1 Samuel 4. Everyone remembers a story about Samuel, the little boy in the temple, and, here I am, the Lord speaking to Samuel when he's a little boy, and Eli telling him, just say, here I am, Lord. Well, Eli, the priest, the message that Samuel got was to chew out Eli and tell him he's going to be judged because he was not dealing with the sexual abuse and the financial abuse of his sons who were priests and what they were doing to the people of Israel. Now, you can read all about that. It was financial abuse, stealing offerings from the Lord, asking people for more than was the priest due, and sexual abuse of women working at the door of the temple. So, and Eli was a nice guy, but he wasn't strong enough. He gave a mild rebuke to his sons and didn't stop them. Yeah. So the Lord caused them to be defeated in battle, the ark to be captured, his sons to be killed, and Eli to fall over dead when he heard the news. So, what we're experiencing, everything from the cover-up or ineffective discipline to the kind of abuse, that goes back to the Old Testament. And, of course, we actually do see it, sad to say, as soon as, the Lord chooses people. He chooses 12, and one of them betrays the Lord. And later on, Paul, who was born out of due course, wasn't one of the original 12, but he writes a letter to Timothy, 1 Timothy. And, the love of money is the root of all evil. That phrase, everyone knows that. It's given in context of a priest or presbyter who has succumbed to the love of money. So even in New Testament times, there are clergy who succumb to the world, the flesh, and the devil. And the big temptations are temptation to power, temptation to sexual abuse, temptation to financial abuse. So that stuff is nothing new in the life of the church. It's sad, and we should root it out where we can, but it's nothing new at all.
Is it at all unusual for it really seems like this is well, I don't know. As I'm asking the question, I'm not even sure that it's right what I'm about to say, but it seems like this crisis in particular is a crisis that comes right out of the heart of the church, and maybe we're more used to thinking about persecutions and those things from outside. Maybe I'm thinking about that wrong, though. I don't know. Is the current crisis unusual in that regard, or is this common for us to kind of have crumbling from within?
No, the biggest danger, of course, is crumbling from within. The church persecuted from without becomes stronger. In the first 3 centuries, there were schisms from within that caused problems. The persecution from without was the seed of the church. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. But even in the first 3 centuries, we were struggling with heresies and schisms on small scales, local scales. And then very soon after, as soon as Christianity became legal, we had a huge struggle with clergy, certain clergy, small number, but very, very crafty, who were pushing a new agenda to change church teaching, basically saying that Jesus wasn't equal to God. And that was we needed an ecumenical council, but even after that council for 55 years, it was a knockdown, drag-out fight to put down this heresy, which the council had put down on paper. But unfortunately, councils, we have this idea that, wow, it's really crazy. After Vatican II, it seems like all hell broke loose. That seems to prove that Vatican II wasn't really of God. Nope, because after every council, unfortunately, all hell breaks loose. There's always a struggle, and there's always, unfortunately, a battle, and that battle is oftentimes severe and leads to schism or leads to division. So division is a horrible thing, and scandals are a horrible thing. The Lord tells us it's better for a person to have a millstone tied around his neck and be thrown into the sea than to give offense to one of my little ones. So people who do cause scandal, it's nothing to be taken lightly. It's a terrible thing. So we ought to be really, really careful ourselves. And if we ever do cause scandal, repent seriously and do some serious reparation and penance. But on the other hand, we can't be scandalized or allow it. A stumbling block, scandal means stumbling block. Okay. And, some of us are able to have a stumbling block in our path, and we're nimble enough by the power of the Holy Spirit to jump over it. But others of us allow that stumbling block to knock us down and keep us from walking in the way of the Lord. So for those who put the stumbling block in the way, woe is you. But all of us, we can't help it if stumbling blocks are laid across our path. We need to learn how to jump over them and look at the presence of the Lord in the church. The thing that I think is most important, Si, is if this were simply a human institution, the Catholic Church, it would have fallen apart a long time ago, like most other human movements and human governments. Okay. But the fact that this church has produced saints in every generation and is still here today is testimony that the church is something more than a merely human reality. It is a reality that is empowered, guided by the Holy Spirit. That has the Spirit really as its soul. The soul of the church is the Spirit. Now, some of the members all of us who are still struggling below here are imperfect. Some of us who are imposters. Some of us are hypocrites, But the church itself is the mother, as Pope Francis recently said. And it's the Spirit that's keeping it alive and moving. And it contains within it the source of life and salvation, which is Christ itself, because it's Christ's body.
Do you personally, when you think about the big crises, and I will ask you when we come back from the break about what are the really big ones and how does it compare with today, the crises in the history of the church, but do you, in a way, take a sense of comfort away from reflecting back on them? Like, oh, it's, we've gone through times before that seem like they might be the end.
Way worse. We've gone times before, gone through stuff that's just unbelievable over the last 2,000 years. And it does give me great comfort. It gives me a tremendous sense of gratitude that the Lord has been faithful, even when many have been severely unfaithful, and none of us have been perfectly faithful. The Lord is faithful, and he said that the gates of hell would not prevail, and they have not. So thanks be to God for that. Again, it doesn't mean we're complacent and we acquiesce to evil and corruption. No, we go after it. But we don't let the presence of evil and corruption knock us down and cause us to focus on the enemy. That's what the enemy wants, for us to be disheartened and to focus on him. He basically is poking his finger in our eyes here through this stuff. He's crafty. And so he wants to disedify. He wants to use the sins of members and clergy to dishearten the rank and file and to keep people away from Jesus. That's his point. So we can't let him do that.
We're talking about crisis moments in the history of the Catholic Church. Our guest is Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio. Our number, 888-318-7884, if you'd like to get in on this conversation, 888-318-7884. It's not much longer to be with us, but we still have the store-wide fall sale underway. You go to shop.catholic.com, and it's 20% off hundreds of items in the online store, including books, DVDs, CDs, MP3s, ebooks, BBD, Shibidi. I just made those last two up. I don't know if those are real. But the way you do it is you put in the promo code CALive18 when you check out at shop.catholic.com and save on everything today.
Catholic Answers Live. The only thing missing from today's broadcast is you. Call now with your question.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
The Church has 2,000 years of wisdom to share on what it takes to live life gracefully.
And we're so overwhelmed by how much our faith has transformed our marriage and family especially. We want everyone to experience the incredible gift that the Catholic vision of life and love really is.
More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popchak. Tomorrow morning, 10 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
St. John Paul II stated that, for the disciple of Christ, evangelization is a duty, an obligation of love. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church states that evangelization is necessary for salvation.
So we know we're called, but how do we do it?
St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. To learn more, contact us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to our Super Halloween edition of Catholic Answers Live. Second hour, our chaplain will be here, Father Hugh Barbour, and we're going to take questions of a pastoral nature. If you have something you need a chaplain for, that is the time to call. The number, the same as it is this hour, 888-318-7884. This hour, we're talking about, well, moments of crisis in the history of the Church with Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio, who... well, you were saying you've been giving lots of talks, and it doesn't matter what you're talking about these days. People want to know about the crisis in the Church. Maybe give us a little history of some of these, of the real major crises the Church has gone through.
Sure. Well, here's a couple. One, right after the Council of Nicaea that gave us the core of the creed that we say every Sunday. You know, that council came together to make clear, to clarify the Church's teaching on whether or not Jesus was truly equal to the Father. Church had always believed that, but some folks, very crafty folks, led by a man named Arius, a priest, they had been very effective in weakening a number of people's faith in that and making a big case that he wasn't equal to God the Father. And so anyway, the Church says, okay, we're going to have a council. It's the first council of this kind since the Council of Jerusalem way back in Acts 15. And that happened in 325 AD. So in that council, there was a vote, you know, and the vote was very clear. It was over 300 to 3 or so and voted on this creed. Only 3 people would not sign the creed. One of them was the leader of this heresy, Arius. And so he and 2 of his episcopal sponsors were excommunicated and exiled. Well, within a few years, they were back, and they were just worming their way into the episcopacy and speaking into the ear of the Emperor Constantine and his sons who succeeded him. And they just were amazingly successful at fooling many and changing the opinions of many bishops. So in the East, the majority of the bishops signed various kinds of creeds that actually weakened or diminished or contradicted Nicaea. So, the bishops, either wittingly or unwittingly in the East, most of them were fooled and were out there denying the full divinity of Christ. And this is after a council made it clear. So there were 55 years of battling until in 380, the situation was finally remedied. And even then, there was battling going on in individual areas in the church. So, when people are worried today about this bishop or that bishop contradicting Christian truth or not being strong enough, riding tall enough in the saddle, those are problems, all right, but they're nothing compared to what we went through in the 4th century. So anyway, that's one that I think we all need to be aware of, that we got through that the Lord brought us through. And I will mention that the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, during that period was always one who was strongly committed to Nicaea. In fact, one Pope was exiled. He's put under house arrest because of his faithfulness to Nicaea and to the creed and to the truth of Jesus' divinity. So, but we're talking about a large number of bishops who were hoodwinked for quite a while. So anyway.
You know what? I'm looking at these lines just filling up, but perhaps we should take a few calls.
Okay.
All right. Graham and Jackson, listening on Good Shepherd Catholic Radio. You are up first. Your question for Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio.
All right. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So my question is, as Catholics, if we have personal, verifiable, and, with documentation information that our bishops are placing people at risk, we have a duty to make that public, especially if our bishop refuses to change his ways.
Okay. Let me just say, Graham, I think that's a really good question, and it's a very appropriate question because just recently we have a pretty interesting situation with 60 Minutes interview of a gal, Ms. O'Connor, from the Diocese of Buffalo, who made public documents from the diocese that make clear that the bishop has been kind of allowing several people with credible accusations, several priests, to continue to function despite those accusations, despite the national bishop's policy that first credible accusation means that someone is relieved until such time as they are cleared, but they need to be relieved of their duty and put away from the possibility of, in case the accusation is founded, to minimize the risk to everybody. So that's the national bishop's policy. This bishop is not following that and actually, in a certain way, hiding the truth, releasing names only of those who have died or have resigned, but holding back names of clergy who are active against whom there have been, credible accusations. So anyway, all of you who are listening to this can go out and look at that situation. And of course, I watched it. I followed it carefully. In her case, it seems to me like, she made a very clear and credible case that not revealing this information continues to leave many at risk. She was not under any sort of seal of the confessional, which is a complicating factor for many clergy who find out about stuff like this. So personally, I think we are. And again, the Catholic teaching on conscience is that in complex circumstances, we have to listen to the voice of conscience. And that trumps a lot of things, and it's complicated. So there are individual judgments that need to be made. I think if I were in her position, I would have done the same thing. I was in a position somewhat similar to hers, a little bit, when I was spending some time in my theology school. And I was I had sworn prior to listening and to anyone that that this would remain confidential. I made an oath to that. I didn't have a credible witness. At that time, I thought I needed to maintain that oath of secrecy. and not violate someone's confidence. So it's a very difficult situation. I think, honestly, what we need to do is pray for these situations when we see them occur in others. And when it comes right down to it, it's only us when we're in the situation that can make the call, guided by the Holy Spirit, and I think guided by a spiritual director. I think if you're in that situation, Graham, you ought to ask the advice of somebody that you really trust. Could be your priest, it could be your spouse, it could be, but somebody who has spiritual maturity can help you discern it. So that's the way conscience works. Ultimately, it's the individual in the circumstance who has to make the call.
Graham, thank you for that call. I do hope that answer was helpful to you. Ray in Oklahoma City is listening on EWTN radio. Ray, your question for Dr. D'Ambrosio.
Yeah, I had a question about the Eastern Church and the schism that occurred there. I'm a relatively new convert, 2 years in, but my wife and I have been Protestant, and then coming to the church, we found that we've become more evangelistic than we were when we were evangelicals, which is funny. But but the question is, I've been having conversations with others, both kind of lapsed Catholics and people from the Eastern Church who are of the Eastern Orthodox persuasion, and kind of can you unpack that separation for me? And I know that the Catholic Church, at least to me, seems to be more reaching to kind of try to make something happen there, whereas the discussions I've had with many of my Orthodox friends seem to be very staunch in saying, "Oh no, the Bishop of Rome cut the ties when they changed the creed, and that's that. You don't mess with the creed, and it's done." So, can you unpack that a little bit and maybe give me some points on how to kind of reach out and build a bridge?
Sure. There? Well, I'll tell you what, if we had an hour, I could do a much better job, but we don't. So I'm going to say this. Most folks get a really skewed kind of a view of history, whether it be the Protestant Reformation split or the split between the East and the West. It didn't happen over one date, one mutual excommunication in 1054. It really didn't happen either having to do with quote unquote changing the creed. It's really a matter of a drift and a breakdown of communication, just like in a marriage that happens over a long period of time. It kind of started really in the 4th century and in the way in which the two halves of the empire started drifting apart culturally. And then there was separation because of the lack of the ability to travel, the barbarian invasions, Arab pirates. We kind of developed differently. And there were long periods of mutual excommunication and then reconciliation over a number of things, like the icon crisis, which a lot of times our Eastern brothers and sisters, they don't see that as one of the issues that led to strains in our relationship. But the East, unfortunately, was gripped through the emperor, through the Archbishop of Constantinople, with this wrong theology of we can't have images, and they started destroying images. That was one of the first schisms that we had, because Pope excommunicated both the emperor and the Archbishop of Constantinople because they were denying the use of images and destroying them and killing people who had them. So, there's like on both sides, there are problems. On both sides, there were strains, bad, kind of selfish and ambitious men on both sides, were at fault for the breakdown. It's kind of a pitiful story, and it wasn't really completely final until, I would say, the fall of Constantinople in 1453. If you'd like to hear a good long breakout of this, you can go to my website, to dritaly.com, and there's a CD set. It's just 2 CDs. It's called Christianity Divided. And it's an hour kind of breakout on the Protestant Reformation and how that kind of played out, and also on the East-West schism. The point is that the schism is tragic. And as Vatican II tells us, that men on both sides were to blame. And so our goal now should be, and is for many, there are different kinds of Catholics, there are different kinds of Orthodox. There are some Catholics who have no interest in reconciling with the East and see it simply as the East has to submit to the Pope. And the East, there are people in the East who are hawks, and they think that we're heretics, Trinitarian heretics, etc. But there are also many Eastern priests and bishops who are very much in favor of rebuilding relationship with the Latin or the Catholic Church. So, it really depends who you talk to. But what we need to do is we need to pray for reconciliation and for unity. And we need to work by seeking to understand each other and communicate with each other and build bonds of brotherhood. So anyway, that's what I would tell you in a nutshell on, number one, that it's much more complicated than most people make it out to be. And it's really worth studying. And number two, that we all have an obligation to be praying regularly for restoration of unity and doing whatever we can to be ambassadors. I'll just say this finally. A friend of mine, Orthodox priest, said, the wall went up one brick at a time. Oh. And the only way to take it down is one brick at a time. And each one of us has an opportunity to be part of that.
Ray, thanks very much for that question. Do you have any sense that maybe the fact that the general de-Christianizing of the culture and the pressure that puts on churches will bring us closer to one another because we face a real kind of enemy?
It absolutely should, and in many cases has. So we'll just have to see if all of us can be wise enough and holy and humble enough to allow that pressure to do what the Lord wants it to do, and that is purify and unify us.
Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio is our guest. You can find him at dritaly.com. He leads pilgrimages as well, and we'll talk about one to the Holy Land coming up when we come back. If you have questions or comments about crisis moments in the church, which is what we are talking about today, 888-318-7884 is the number.
This is Bishop Robert Barron. You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old children or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture decays, we have to know how to talk to our children about these issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level to meet the world's challenges. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging onto the shop at Catholic.com.
With the recent commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the release of Humani Vitae, there have been fresh attacks on Catholic teaching from outside and unfortunately inside the Church. That's why Catholic Answers thought it critical to provide a vigorous affirmation of Pope Paul VI's prophetic wisdom with our newest book, Inseparable: 5 Perspectives on Sex, Life, and Love in Defense of Humani Vitae. We asked 5 distinguished contributors to reflect on and defend Humani Vitae from 5 perspectives, each of them compelling, together forming a mosaic of truth. Don't be caught uninformed when the topic comes up among friends, family, and coworkers. Order your copy of Inseparable today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or by visiting the shop at Catholic.com.
Our goal in this life is to become saints in the next.
Who do you know who's closest to being a saint?
Share with us on tomorrow's Take 2 with Jerry and Debbie.
Now let's return to Catholic Answers Live with Cy Kellett.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Happy Halloween to you. Hey, if you're driving, be really careful now. This is the time to be really careful. And if you got kids who drive, send them a text and remind them to be really careful. Because this is crazy time out there, and we don't want any little people out there in their little, I don't know, with their lightsabers and their Ninja Turtles. And I don't know what people dress up. No, as their Olafs and their other Frozen characters out there getting hurt. So drive carefully for the rest of today. because, well, you know why. You know what's going on out there. 888-318-7884 is our number. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio, and we are discussing crisis moments in the history of the church. There's been some doozies. We've gotten to a couple. We'll get to some more. Before I do that, though, Dr. D'Ambrosio, a couple times I've given out your website, dritaly.com. What kind of things will people find there?
Hey, they'll find a great article on All Saints Day, which is tomorrow, and how we ought to be celebrating it, as well as All Souls Day. Purgatory, prayers for the dead, where'd that come from? Halloween, you guys are trying to do what I'm trying to do, and that is debunk this crazy notion that Halloween is a Druid pagan witch feast day that we appropriated. It's kind of like the other way around, honestly. But people need to know where the customs of Halloween come from, just to get rid of some of the crazy notions that are floating around out there on the internet and all. So anyway, they get a lot of great teaching podcasts, videos, but they also get information on how they can bring me in to speak in their area, at their parish, or their men's conference. That's dritaly.com, dritaly.com. And then I lead pilgrimages to the Holy Land, and I have two coming up, and we have space on both. Some last-minute seats available for the one right after Christmas, and a few more seats available for the one right after Easter. And going to the Holy Land with me, it really, I think it's an awesome experience because we take a prayerful approach, and you learn more than a typical pilgrimage. Between the special guide that I have from the Holy Land, who's Arab Catholic, his sharing his perspective, and me sharing a little bit more biblical and historical perspective than you usually get from guides. And we pray our way through. So it's an encounter with the Lord in these holy places. It's a life-changing experience. So if you'd like to come, just come to dritaly.com, click the pilgrimage tab at the top of every page, and that'll bring you to the information on the Holy Land pilgrimages.
dritaly.com is the place to go. We go now to Jeffrey in Connecticut watching on Facebook Live. Jeffrey, thanks so much for watching on Facebook Live. Your question for Dr. D'Ambrosio.
Hi, guys. Big fan. Thanks, Dr. Italy, a few years ago for coming to Connecticut for a men's conference. My question is, given the current crisis of the priesthood and the scandal and the ecclesiastical and sexual corruption, how does this relate to the time of St. Peter Damian, and what effect does homosexual inclinations have on this?
Okay. Let me say this. It's a really good question. St. Peter Damian, for those of you who don't know about him, he was an abbot in the 11th century, and he later became bishop, which is not what he really wanted to do, but he was called on to become bishop. But the thing with Peter Damian is he saw tremendous amount of sexual abuse going on, and it was homosexual sexual abuse, which has always been a problem. Anytime you get men together, there's always an issue. So obviously the clergy, this is a concentration of men, so it's a temptation for those with that inclination, or for those who are unscrupulous and who are deliberately hypocritical. It's a great fishing ground for people with that inclination who have that kind of a bent. So he saw it happening. He brought it to the attention of authorities. He didn't see the Pope was handling it with sufficient seriousness. So it's very similar to what people are, upset about today. It's authorities not taking the right aggressive response to it, and not going after it and dealing with it properly. So that's really what we find, and anybody can get St. Peter Damian's book. You can search on St. Peter Damian and kind of find it. I think it's Gomorrah is the title of the book. So that's the thing about St. Peter Damian. Very similar to our situation today, and I would say, if anything, it was worse. So the next thing is homosexuality. First of all, homosexual inclination. Pope Benedict said that people with a very strong homosexual inclination that has not been under control, that's really shouldn't be folks admitted to orders. I would agree with the Pope on that. And I would say that there is a great problem. There's a problem with sexual abuse, both by heterosexual inclined people and homosexual inclined people in the clergy, for sure. But the problem with homosexuality is, number one, it really is, as much as people hate, don't like this and all that, it's a disordered desire that is hard, I would say, especially in a men's context, when you have authority over other people and you're living with men and all that, there's a tremendous temptation for the thing to get out of control in terms of evil sexual activity. And the church's teaching is clear. It's just, it's not going to change. I don't care what anyone out there thinks or says. It's natural law, and it's also clearly in Old and New Testament that sexual expression is connected to the giving of life as well as the expression of affection. And so the only proper place for that is in heterosexual marriage, which is, it's crazy that we have to say heterosexual marriage. Marriage means a union of man and woman that's ordered towards the procreation and raising of children, as well as towards the mutual support of husband and wife. So for us, the sexual act means two things. One, it's the expression of the sacramental bond of union between a man and woman that is meant to last for as long as either one of them lives. It's lifetime. And number two, it's meant to be open towards, and it's ordered intrinsically towards, the giving of new human life. So homosexual expression of sexual intimacy is always, in every case, wrong morally. So it can't be done by a Christian. And as much as people want to try to baptize it today, it can't be done. So yeah, the problem of homosexuality in the clergy is a serious problem. And there should be no one who's sexually active in the clergy. And I think that priests who have a homosexual orientation, and I know of several who are chaste, holy priests, ought to be supported and loved. But I would say that we need to be clear that men coming into the seminary life who have had serious problems with homosexuality and have not lived chastely and have lived out that sexual expression, I really don't think that this priesthood is the place for them. And they can rise to the heights of holiness, but I don't think the priesthood is the proper place either for them in terms of their own holiness, being a great place of greater temptation, and also the problem of leading other people astray through this falling in this inclination. So anyway, that's what I would say in response to your question, Jeffrey.
And Jeffrey, there are just a ton of people lined up to ask Dr. D'Ambrosio questions, so we're going to keep moving. I hope that was helpful to you. We're talking about crisis moments in the history of the church. If you have questions about the crisis moments in the history of the church, or about this particular crisis moment in the church, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. 884. We go now to Simon in Atlanta. Thanks for waiting, Simon. Your question for Dr. D'Ambrosio.
Yes, I have a question. Have you ever considered it that this may crisis in Chinese means opportunity, that this may actually be a great opportunity for a church, because, we are living in a world where with new technology we can actually address some issues we could not address before. Like in the past, if you had a horrible bishop, it was years of information to reach Vatican and back. And, it was difficult, and there were political issues because, the king may be this bishop's brother, and, to remove him was very difficult. But now we have actually, for the first time, opportunity to clean our top hierarchy, if a lay faithful are going to get involved, So I'm just thinking, instead of just thinking this is the worst of the times, this actually may be the best of the times, because we can actually challenge, the bishops that fail and, and say, don't do this. We don't want you, and we have the power. We didn't have it before, because before, if you stood up to the bishop, first of all, no one would hurt you, and many times bishop would have his own army, and he could actually kill you if you stood up to him too much.
I think I feel like we've got a sense of the question, Simon, and we're short on time. Excuse me, Simon, we're short on time. So let's let Dr. D'Ambrosio respond. What do you make of that as a moment of opportunity?
Yes, crisis it means a moment of truth, and it does mean an opportunity. So I really agree with Simon, and it is a great opportunity for us to change a number of things. Now, I have to say, since 2002, there has been a change. We've become much more aware of the way sexual predators operate, and a lot of us in the church, if not all of us who do any kind of ministry, have to go through training that helps make it much easier to spot these kinds of issues and to deal with them. And so I think we've had a tremendous improvement. But I think right now the higher up clergy in the church, the bishops, the cardinals, need to be more accountable. And I think it's an opportunity for us to see how lay people need to be involved more in the government of the church. Now, this doesn't mean that lay people ought to be taking over the role of the sacramental role of bishops by any means, or priests, or taking over the role of being authoritative teachers. That's magisterium. But in terms of governance, it's fascinating. In the early days of the church, bishops were elected by the laity, by the whole church, laity and clergy, and of course they had to be approved by local bishops and by the Pope. So it was a consensual process. The process that we have right now has a lot of problems, in the way bishops are chosen and the way cardinals are chosen, in the sense that it's kind of opaque. And I think that right now there's lots of great questions being asked about that. And they're okay questions to ask. They're not disobedient. They're not rebellious questions to ask. For example, the independent lay review boards that are being brought in more increasingly to help discern these things, I think that's really a healthy thing. It's a really good thing. And I think we need to pray. I don't want to be on one of those. That's a horrible job, if you ask me. But I think we need to pray for those who are being called. I have a friend that I was just visiting with in the island of Malta, who's being called to participate in such a board. So we need to pray for that and see this as an opportunity for us to move forward in purification, in helping to develop better structures, better processes, as well as personal holiness. I mean, processes are important, but also personal holiness is important, and a call to personal holiness is, and that's really what All Saints' Day is all about. We're all called to the heights of holiness. So that's appropriate to be talking about today.
Simon, thank you very, very much for that call and for that question. Right now, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment, free ebook from Catholic Answers is available. If you'd like to get that free ebook, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment, you just go to the Catholic Answers Facebook page and sign up, and they'll send you that free book. We're not trying to get anything from you. We're just trying to give it to you. So go ahead and get it over there at the Catholic Answers page on Facebook. Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment, a free ebook available right now.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
We need Catholic radio because we need the voice of the church in the public forum. We live in a time that the secular voice dominates so thoroughly that we need to get that Catholic perspective out. Just as Fulton Sheen used radio and TV in the last century, we need to continue to use this means to announce the Catholic faith in the public forum.
Bishop Robert Barron thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. As you know, it's Halloween, and happy Halloween to you and yours, and drive carefully, please. And second hour, our chaplain will be here, Father Hugh Barbour, and we'll take chaplain-type questions. If you have need of a chaplain for a pastoral question, a question about your prayer life, question about family life, a question about marital status, all those things that we usually ask chaplains, that's what the chaplain comes in here to do, and you are welcome to call next hour. This hour, we discuss crisis moments in the history of the church with Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio. This is one of the topics that he will come to your parish or event and talk about, and you'd be very happy to have him, I am sure indeed. And there's a great deal of hope that comes from reflecting on 2,000 years of crisis following upon crisis, because it's easy. It helps us to remember the Lord is still with his church. He didn't give up, and his ways are not our ways, and these things have a way of working out to the best. For example, you talked a bit about the Arian controversies, but think of how clear the creeds are and how helpful they are to us understanding who Jesus is, for example, because of the response to that crisis. I wonder if there's any other crises, Dr. D'Ambrosio, that you look back on and you go, well, here are some very important things that came out of that we can actually be thankful for.
Yeah, absolutely, Cy. First, I'm going to say that every single heresy that's come up in the history of the church, the Arian heresy denying Christ's divinity, but there's a whole lot of other ones came up as well, okay? And I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'm just going to say that every single one was used by the Lord providentially. Now, this does not exculpate the heretics who attacked the truth and were obstinate and wouldn't listen to the authority of the church, okay? That they were wrong. But I'm just saying that the Lord, in his goodness, like Romans 8 says, for those who love God and are called in his plan, everything can work out for the good. And that's the great thing about divine providence. It takes evil, like the cross, and makes it an instrument of good. It turns the devil against himself. And that's what's happened with heresies. They forced us to reflect more deeply and to come to greater clarity about the Trinity, about the humanity and divinity of Jesus, about the reality of the Eucharist and all the sacraments. And getting to that, that big problem was the Protestant Reformation. Now, the Protestant Reformation, again, those who caused schism, I'd hate to have to answer for that, So I'm not going to canonize any of those people who were involved in causing schism. But the Protestant Reformation was reforming. It was responding to a church at that time in the beginning of the 16th century that was in really tough shape in lots of ways. Clergy were illiterate. We had no seminary system. St. Peter Canisius, in the midst of the Reformation, went over to Poland trying to bring Poland back. It initially kind of went with the Protestant Reformation, the Lutheran Reformation. So he went there to try to win them back, which was successful. However, he said in his travels, he could scarcely find a priest who was not living in open concubinage, which means, obviously, cohabitating with a woman outside of marriage. So the point I'm trying to make here is the Protestant Reformation was responding to tremendous corruption on lots of levels in the church, bad theology that was being taught, not heretical doctrinal teaching by the church, but a kind of theological system that emphasized human effort, and wasn't appreciating grace, and was actually, you could see how a scrupulous person could be easily tormented by the kind of spirituality and theology that had developed at the beginning of the 16th century. Okay, now, so the big problems, and the church was slow in dealing with them because lots of the clergy, the higher clergy, were nobility and were not there for the right reasons. They had valid orders, but they didn't have souls that were on fire for Jesus Christ. And that includes a number of popes. Okay, so the Protestant Reformation forced the church, to finally to respond in renewal. And the Council of Trent, the many religious orders that were developed during the time, the Council of Trent mandated the first seminary system to deal with ignorance and immorality among the clergy and start giving better formation to the clergy. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the Lord sometimes uses crises, as it was said earlier, like this crisis, to prod his church to reform and renewal and repentance. So we should cooperate with that. Just like the Lord used the Babylonians to judge the people of Israel, and bringing them to Babylon caused them to be purified and to become much more serious about their Jewish identity as the people of God. So I think the Lord uses sometimes the persecution of the world and the press to lead us to change, so that we should be grateful for that and cooperate with that and be humble about that.
I am shocked to hear that you might think that the press would have an agenda regarding the Catholic Church. That isn't. I don't know. We'll discuss that another time. Monsignor Bill is on the line. Monsignor Bill, thanks for your call. Your question or comment for Dr. D'Ambrosio.
I was just going to call attention to the newest edition of CARA research report. That's the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate. out of Georgetown University. They show the trend on clergy sexual abuse of minors. And in the last 3 years, nationwide, there have been 22 allegations, an average of 7 a year. But if we go back to the 1970s, it was about 300 to 400 a year. So the church is making progress in this crisis. And I think we need to maybe ask people to call upon a virtue of perspective, if I might use that word, for a virtue that we are learning from the past. We can't fix the past. We can't erase it, but we can learn from it. And in my diocese, Galveston, Houston, we have trained 135,000 adults, clergy, volunteers, teachers, in child protection, etc. So I think we are making those changes.
Is that possible, Dr. D'Ambrosio, that's one of those things that's not that you want to say brings good out of evil, but one of those good things that God has given to us as a consequence of this current crisis?
I think so, Cy, and I thank you very much, Monsignor Bill, for bringing this to the attention of our listeners here. And I would recommend that people take a look at that study. And CARA, as well as Pew Research Center, just have phenomenal stats and research on all sorts of different things, but on this matter. And we definitely have made progress. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I've seen it, and I'm one of the people who went through that training. And I'm grateful for it. I maintain it every year and update it. So I really do think it's pretty amazing the progress we've made. And I think this new crisis, it's shown a spotlight on seminaries, and it's also shown a spotlight on the fact that perhaps we haven't taken as seriously the sexual abuse of adults. And so, I think people are scrambling, including bishops. I think some of our bishops have made great statements, are taking great action. So, we're looking obviously at people who haven't taken good action. And that's regrettable, and they need to be called to account for that. But we have bishops who are seeking to go beyond the protection of legal minors to the protection of adults. And I would say any adult who is young, like a seminarian, is vulnerable. So the protection of all adults from any kind of sexual harassment, that's really important. And the accountability of bishops is very, very important for their personal behavior as well as for cover-up. So we're making progress, and these are the next areas to make progress in. And I think we've already started to making progress in those areas. Thank God.
Monsignor Bill, thank you very, very much for your contribution. That was very helpful. Let's try to get to Robert in Missouri, listening on 88.1 FM before we have to go. Robert, you're going to have to make it kind of quick to let Dr. D'Ambrosio respond. No, Robert?
Is there?
Oh, hi, Robert.
Yes. Quickly, I've coined a phrase in terms of dealing with the struggle that's going on contemporarily, entitled "We're in the times of the gauntlet, trying to devour the chalice." This is referring to relativism, worldliness, and existentialism eating away at the Catholic Church. And I was just wondering if, when the Church changed from Latin to English, if this opened the door for this kind of threats.
Okay, Robert. I want to say that, in my opinion, the use of vernacular in the liturgy has absolutely nothing to do with the rise of relativism. Unfortunately, we find St. Justin Martyr in the 2nd century noting that relativism is being a big problem. And that was a time when the church didn't speak Latin or English, it spoke Greek. So unfortunately, relativism has been around for a while, and it's rearing its ugly head in a big way in Western civilization, and has been for quite some time. There was a battle with relativism actually in a heresy called modernism. You may have heard of that. And that was at the turn of the 20th century when the church was speaking Latin. So anyway, relativism is a problem, and that's a big problem with sexual ethics. Relativism basically says there's no objective reality, no objective truth, and so we can make it up for ourselves, each person. It's subjectivism. also, because each person is what he feels he or she is, and that's what we see with transgenderism right now. So the church needs to fight that because it kills people. I mean, to think that you can fly and jump off a high building, that's a subjective idea, but it doesn't jive with reality. And you find that out when you meet the ground. And people are finding that out through venereal disease, through just horrible suffering that comes along with sexual sin. So I think the church needs to be very, very clear in love about its sexual teaching and be proud of it. Because it's a gift to the church. It's a gift to the world, and we need to model it joyfully. We don't want to just wag our fingers at relativists and people who are relativizing sexual ethics and just say naughty, naughty. We need to be able to show the beauty of Christian marriage, the beauty of Christian objective truth, and call people to that, invite them to it gently, and welcome them to it. I think someone said evangelism is like one beggar telling another beggar where the food is. So one sinner to another sinner, showing where truth is, which is food for our soul. Let's do that.
Thank you, Robert, for that call. Thank you, Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio, for a very fine hour. Oh, did we lose him? Well, don't forget, you can find out all about Dr. D'Ambrosio at dritaly.com. dritaly.com. Thank you, Doctor, and we'll see you next hour for The Chaplain is In with Father Hugh Barbour.
Archbishop Charles Chaput of Philadelphia says of Why We're Catholic: clear, practical, simply organized, very readable, and rich in content. It's a pleasure to recommend it. Bishop Thomas Olmsted of Phoenix says, this book is made for the challenges of our times. I highly recommend it. Why We're Catholic is the groundbreaking resource by apologist Trent Horn. That one book you can hand to anyone as a starting point for helping them find their way into or back to the practice of the Catholic faith. Plant seeds of faith in the hearts and minds of your non-Catholic friends and family. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic today. You can order your copies of Why We're Catholic by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture's moral center continues to fly apart, and with every form of deviance publicly aired and celebrated, we have no choice but to equip our kids to understand about such issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level, to meet the world's challenges. Silence can no longer be an option. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging on to the shop at Catholic.com.
Catholic Answers is a media ministry that serves Christ by explaining and defending the Catholic faith. We help Catholics grow in their faith, we bring former Catholics home, and we lead non-Catholics into the fullness of the truth. Our goal is to be the most trusted and accessible source for sharing, explaining, and defending the Catholic faith through as many media as possible, from personal contact to the most innovative means of mass communication. Have questions? We've got answers. Catholic Answers. Visit us today at Catholic.com or call us with your questions at 619-387-7200.
What difference does it make who or what you worship or what you believe? Sharing the faith used to make some people mad because it challenged their own strong beliefs. Today, it makes a lot of people yawn because they don't have strong beliefs about anything. Religious indifference is the great spiritual sickness of our age, a product of the relativism that dominates modern culture. This is Matt Nelson, and in my new book, Just Whatever, I'll take down the building blocks of religious indifference one by one. We'll look at the different kinds of indifference you tend to encounter in your friends and family members to see where they come from and why they're seductive. What you believe matters. Find out why and what to do about it in my new book, Just Whatever. You can order your copy of Just Whatever by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Just like the saints of the Counter-Reformation, our own souls are in constant need of reform, of reconversion to God and His will for us. We struggle with sin. We become distracted in prayer. We find it hard to be loving and easy to be selfish. In Reform Yourself, Sean McAfee shows you how these magnificent saints can be guides to your own personal transformation. We all need to reform our souls. Let the saints who reformed the church show you how. Order your copy of Reform Yourself today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. It is Halloween. Don't forget, if you're driving, slow down, drive carefully. There's tiny little people dressed as raccoons out there and all kinds of other things. I don't know why I thought raccoons, because maybe somebody would accidentally run into a raccoon. But there's also people, kids have every kind of costume, from a raccoon to a possum to a squirrel. I suppose other kinds of, are those bad costumes? Those were not. Sorry, they're getting looks here in the studio.
It shows bigotry against animals.
I didn't mean to.
You shouldn't dress up like an animal.
The chaplain is in this hour, by the way. That is his voice. Father Hugh Barbour is our chaplain. Father Hugh is a Norbertine priest. Are you a real priest or a fake priest today?
I'm a real priest. I'm not in costume.
You're not. That's right.
I wear this every single day.
So let's say you go out to the store today. Do you think people think, oh, that guy's dressed up as a monk or something?
I'm going to Sprouts, not for an advertisement, but I'm going there after this show is over to get dinner to make for my pastor. So
you're going to see if people...
They're going to see me in the habit.
Happy Halloween. Yeah, you're going to...
No, they won't do that.
Great costume.
They're used to seeing me.
Oh, they know you there.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
Maybe they'll give me some candy, but I doubt it.
You should just wear what you're wearing.
That's what I wear.
And go trick-or-treating.
That's what I wear.
You didn't
to
let
the
me
grocery
finish
store.
So you should go trick-or-treating and say, hi, I'm a priest.
I don't think
trick
so.
Trick or treat.
I don't think
Why?
so.
Some people give out good stuff. You could get good stuff that way.
Yeah.
The chaplain is in this hour. That means
the kids have it.
If you have a pastoral question of any sort, you are welcome to call. Maybe you have a question about your prayer life. Maybe you have a question about family life, marriage. All those things that we might turn to a chaplain for, we turn to Father Hugh during this hour. Your call is welcome. You know what? If you need a chaplain and you're not Catholic, you can call too. Anybody can call and talk with Father. 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884 is the number. You have no objections to Halloween, Father?
Not in itself. I think it's nice for Catholics to know the origin of it, that the practice of going around door to door and asking for free food was something which was the result of the devotion of the departed of medieval Christians. And so the poor would go around from house to house and say, if you give us something to eat, we will pray for your dead. And that's the origin of it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't go over very well in the current American economy. People might think that was some kind of evil thing that,
give out free bread.
Illegal immigrants are doing or something.
Well, and also people don't pray for the dead anymore. We've talked about
problem.
that.
But the origin of it was precisely prayer for the departed. So give us something to eat and we'll pray for your dead. Like people go to a priest and they say, I'd like a mass for my departed, and they give a donation and the priest says mass for the departed.
Right.
And so all of us can do the same thing. In certain Catholic countries, like in the Philippines, there are little old ladies who are retired, and people give them a donation so they can sit in the church and pray rosaries for their family all day.
Wow, that's actually a really nice thing.
Right, and Protestants are scandalized because you're paying for prayer, and you go, no, you're giving a good gift to somebody because they, in a work of charity, will pray for your family while you're at work and doing other things. It makes perfect sense to me. So as long as Catholics remember that that's the origin of it, and teach their children that, it's a good thing.
So what would you think that parents, when they send their kids up to the door, should they make the kids say, "Happy All Saints Day" to you?
Oh, well, there you go. Well, that's a custom which was required in my family. When I grew up, my dad was an Episcopal priest, and he went around with us trick-or-treating. He went around his cassock, too, by the way.
He wore his cassock.
He wore his cassock, yeah, for sure. And so he would stand there on the sidewalk, and we had to say, once they gave us the candy, we were required to say, "Happy All Saints Day." And if we didn't, then he would make us go back and say it.
That must have been extra fun as a child.
Well, I mean,
having to stand out from the other children.
Well, when we were really small, it didn't matter. But later on, when we get to preteen or early teen years, we didn't like it.
Right.
But the point was, he said, these people need to be reminded of what we're doing. You know, it's All Hallows Eve. Even on NPR this morning, they said, today is October 31st, All Hallows Eve. And I thought, amazing that they actually managed to mention that without choking or
I don't listen to NPR. I only
something.
listen to Catholic radio. But
Oh, thank you. I'm not advertising, but I'm just saying these secular people.
I'm not saying I'm better than you.
They can't avoid it. You are better than I am by definition.
Okay, Father.
Yeah.
What about? Let me just throw this out at you because I am going to because a lot of people do want to talk to you in your capacity as chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, what about these people? They just. I'm going to try to say this in a non-frustrated way. Halloween is a pagan festival that was stolen by the Catholic Church.
Garbage, total garbage.
I'm so glad.
All right, we get sick of this, and it's the same with the Dia de los Muertos. That they have the Day of the Dead thing. This is a pagan, New Age. Speaking of NPR, people who are like promoting this Day of the Dead thing with the Hispanics, and they pretend that it has nothing to do with prayer for the departed. And it's very annoying.
Yeah.
It's actually false because they like all the creepy bones and dead people stuff, and they even had that hideous movie where they taught people that you're immortal as long as people remember you. All that garbage. It's like, what was it? It was one. It was last year.
I know what it was.
They got some
Coco.
awards.
There was some beautiful
Coco.
stuff in that movie too. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah, beautiful, but I mean false.
Well, in that part of the
theology,
movie, it
anyway.
seemed false.
But the point is that the Mexican and Hispanic tradition for November the 2nd is prayer for the dead. They go and they put altars at their family graves, and they eat and they sing and they drink and they pray for the departed. Protestants who have no theological connection to the dead, they're forbidden to pray for the dead if they follow their leaders, are charmed by this because they don't have any way to process their continuing connection with the departed.
Yeah.
Other than just putting them in the grave. And so they kind of admire the fact that these Latin Catholics still kind of hang out with them a little bit, at least every year. And so they want to present a version of it which doesn't require any Catholic considerations. So I would say, let's just stop. If you're an Hispanic Catholic, tell people that the Day of the Dead is to pray for the dead.
Yeah.
Don't let them pretend that you're some kind of weird superstitious Aztec who, after gouging out the heart of your opponent now is like, don't do that. This is a Catholic feast.
It's a Catholic feast, right?
And it developed late. It was not in a pagan period. It was in the 10th century when the monks of Cluny established the Feast of All Saints' Day, which was at the end of the church year where we have these Gospels about the Last Judgment, and then they added to it All Souls' Day. It was not an ancient celebration.
No.
They're making this up.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
it's made up out of whole
Totally
cloth.
made
It's
up,
like the people who say like Joan of Arc was a witch or something.
No,
it's
made
not
up.
true.
The English said she was a witch.
Well, the English were wrong. In this case, Father.
Right.
In this one case. The English were wrong.
Yes. It's too bad, but
and the French were right.
I do admit it.
I'm glad you could admit that the English were wrong in one instance. 888-318-7884 is our number. I just want to say this before I go. When I said there's something beautiful in Coco, I do agree with you that the idea of what happens after death is moronic in the movie Coco. But the idea that elderly people and young people in a family belong together. It was so beautiful to me to see an old person loved and revered by the children of the family. That's very Mexican.
Right.
It's very
and
human.
It's something
and very
which is
beautiful.
very much lacking in our current culture.
Very much lacking in our
culture. Where they're shoved off into residences.
All right, let us go to a call then, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right, Susan in Reno, Nevada, listening on the Catholic Answers app. You are first up with Father Hugh Barbour. Your question, please.
Hi. Half my family is Catholic and the other half is Protestant. And I was wondering, how do I talk to my Protestant family who is truly seeking God in their own way, that the theology, getting the theology right is important. It's not it's just truly seeking God maybe isn't enough, or am I wrong? I don't know how to talk to them about that.
Now, are they very devout Protestants, or are they just kind of normal?
No, they're very devout. They come. My family comes from Kansas, and half it was like the War of the Roses to get them.
So are they Lutherans, or? I'm just saying for Kansas.
Well,
I mean, I'm just trying to think of the tradition they're from.
The two I'm talking about, my mom and my brother, and my mom actually does go to church with my father and me to Mass, but she doesn't really believe that the Eucharist is the body and blood of Christ, and
Lutherans believe that.
In purgatory and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I would
my
say
brother goes to, I'm not sure what kind of a church it is, but it's very fundamentalist.
Yeah, I would say that the first way, of course, is since the first and great commandment is to love God, and the second is to love your neighbors yourself, is to be as loving and careful of their needs as you possibly can be. But then also, I would suggest this, that in your prayer, you pray explicitly to Our Lady, like when you pray the Rosary, for example, for their conversion to the true and Catholic faith. So first thing is just the charity you show them. Second thing is prayer for their conversion. And then when you have the opportunity to give them something or show them something, that you give them something which is devout and edifying, but which is also Catholic. Like give a little Madonna, a sweet little Madonna to them, that you found somewhere you bought, or a crucifix, or some kind of devout work like the Imitation of Christ or something. But give them something which is truly Catholic, but which they in their own tradition couldn't really reject, but just give it to them, and just kind of work on them that way. And then if they have any questions or observations, then you answer with patience, or you say, well, I don't know the answer right now. I'll get back to you. How does that sound?
Okay. That sounds right. That's what I try to do. When we get into conversations every once in a while, I'm just not sure how to get over that, but I guess I need to let them do that, not me.
Well, I would just be gentle about it. Give them like pretty or beautiful things that might attract them to the faith. Either music, art, things to read, things to eat, celebrations of feast days, and just kind of like work on it from that point of view, because it's very difficult within your own family, as you know.
You could give him Frank Della Rocca's album, In This Place. Frank Della Rocca is a wonderful composer, and there's a song on there. Not a song, but O Magna Mysterium. You're familiar with the prayer O Magna? Yeah. He set it to classical music, but in a beautiful new way. It's really exciting. And I say that only because you were talking about beautiful things, and there are some really beautiful pieces of Catholic music being made right now. Mm-hmm. And right now, I have an interview with Frank Della Rocca up on Catholic Answers Focus. So
Good.
People can get it.
Listen to it.
But I like that
the music
idea.
thing is actually
beauty.
not a bad idea. Yeah. It's a very good idea.
Susan, thanks for the call. We got to take a break. I have not talked to anybody in the promotions department, but this has got to be connected to Halloween, because we're giving away a free ebook, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment. And I think that must be a Halloween connection. All you do is you go to the Catholic Answers Facebook page, and you get it. You get the ebook. Just look for the little tag there that says Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment, and you get it free. Just go to Catholic Answers on Facebook.
And that's
and it's by somebody here at Catholic Answers.
Okay, all right.
A really, really good writer named a guy. I don't know. I'm looking at for some help here. No one's giving me any help. All right, we'll take a break. We'll find out who wrote it. We'll be right back.
I'm so sorry.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Why do we need Catholic radio? Because not everybody's sitting in front of a computer or watching their television set at home. How about when driving to work? Catholic radio's there for you. I may be a Catholic priest, but I'm still a student of the faith, and Catholic radio helps supply good material, whether it be a question and answer format show, whether it be a show itself on doctrine or theology. I myself, as a priest, am always learning.
Father Wade thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
Do you love praying for people? Have you ever wanted to use your gift of prayer to share Jesus with others and build up the body of Christ? Start a public prayer station with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Listen to people's needs, pray with them, or invite them to meet you at church. St. Paul Street Evangelization can help you get started. Find out how at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, the host. It's Father Mike Driscoll, of course, who wrote that book. I don't know why I drew a blank. Maybe because I'm not that bright.
It's a very good book,
because
too,
it's
because
Halloween.
he has very good judgment. It's a good book to read about.
And that's why you wanted me to say who wrote it, and then
Right,
I
that
just
was what I was
came
trying
up
to like.
totally dry.
Okay,
My
that's
well
good,
was dry there
But I
for a
mean,
moment.
that's for Mike Driscoll. It's a very good book.
Yeah, and so what we're talking about, in case you're just joining us, we're giving away a free ebook, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment by Father Mike Driscoll. It's available on the Facebook page of Catholic Answers. Just go to Facebook, put in Catholic Answers. We're the first thing that pops up. Go there, and you can get it. 888-318-7884 is our number, 888-318-7884. The chaplain is in this hour. We go now to Tom in Columbus, Ohio, listening on St. Gabriel Radio. Tom, your question for Father.
Hello, everyone. In proposing for marriage, is it appropriate, or is it, do you know if it's in the Catholic tradition for a man to do that in the church? Like,
to propose?
Yeah, to make a proposal.
Yes.
Have you already proposed?
No, I have not.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I would say that if you're going to follow the real tradition, first the man goes to the father of the bride-to-be and asks for her hand in marriage. And it's not because the father can control the situation. That is, if she wants to marry you, she can marry you, and he can't control it. But it's always good to establish a good bond between the family of the woman to be married to you and you too. So first you start with the father. So the first proposal is to the dad or the parents. I mean, classically speaking. But none of this is obligatory. It's not in church law. It's not a requirement. It's none of that, because marriage is so foundational that you can't add these things to it. But let's say if you follow the tradition, you go to her dad and say, I love your daughter, and obviously you raised her really well, and so I'm very interested in marrying her, and so on and so forth. And then he might have some questions or wonder about your life or your work or whatever. Maybe he already knows you, but I would go to the father first, or the parents first in any case, and then you propose to her. You can propose anywhere you want. Certainly in the church is fine, as long as it doesn't distract people. I mean, not too dramatic, But I would say anywhere you want to is fine, but you want to do it in a place where you are also avoiding the occasion of sin, and just proposing for marriage and nothing else, and so. That's the way it goes. So, and then there is in the church's liturgy a rite of espousal that precedes marriage. It's not much celebrated anymore, but it still exists.
Could you repeat that? What was it again?
It's a rite of?
A rite of espousals, or the rite of engagement, basically, where the engagement ring's blessed and the priest blesses the couple. It's not that common anymore, but it still exists. You could always ask about it. If priests know about it, they can do it. But usually you need to be in a culture where they still do that.
Tom, thanks for the question. I learn something every day. when you're on? Well, no, pretty much every day. Learn something. Jim in Indianapolis, you are up next with Father Hugh Barbour. Jim, your question, please.
Hello. I was married in the Catholic Church and later divorced. And since then, my ex has married and divorced and married and divorced. Does the church consider me to be married to my ex still?
The simple answer is, for the moment, yes. That is, if you had a valid Catholic marriage with your ex, as she's called, then the presumption is that you're still married to her. So if you are looking to determine whether or not you're free to marry after her leaving you and marrying subsequently, then you need to approach the church for a decree of nullity, that is, that examine the previous marriage and to see whether or not there's some grounds under which it might be regarded as null so that you could marry again. But in and of itself, yes, that's the case. So in this time, you're not free to behave as though you could get married without any restriction. You need to approach the church in order to take care of your first union. The fact that she has already gone ahead with this without any consideration is inconvenient for you, but which, if you're going to live as a Catholic, you need to approach the local church in order to take care of that. And it's something which is easily done. And I don't know, maybe you know, did she get an annulment in order to remarry?
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
and we do have 2 children.
Yeah.
So an annulment sounds wrong to me.
Well, if in your conscience you know for sure you were truly married to her, then it would be wrong.
But I think he's saying he feels wrong because of the children. Is that necessary to feel?
Oh, is that what you mean, Jim? Is that for the sake of the kids?
Yes,
is that right?
that the children didn't exist because marriage didn't exist.
No,
kind of thing.
No, but the way that works is in the church's tradition and also in the tradition of the state. If the couple are married by all human evaluation at the time that the children come to be, they're regarded as legitimate children of the parents. There's no sense in which their existence is like illegitimate or something like that. That's never been the case in pagan law, in early Roman law, in Christian law. That is, if you have a putative marriage, marriage which was regarded as valid at the time, then your children are regarded also as legitimate. So that's not a problem. The annulment is more in terms of to consider whether or not you're still free to marry again. And that you have to examine according to the conditions of your marriage to your first spouse at the time at which it occurred.
Thank you, Jim. I hope that was helpful.
God bless you, okay? I'll pray for your kids.
And we go now to Shane in Florida, watching on YouTube Live. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Shane, your question for Father.
Hi there. My question is, I'm really struggling because I honestly repent in confession and make a firm purpose of amendment, but I struggle to follow through on practicing that after I leave the confessional. And I was wondering if you had any advice on how to make your confession stick, how to have the strength to really follow through and grow spiritually.
And okay.
Yeah, it's very good. I would say your question is the question of practically every single Christian who makes use of the sacrament of penance, without a doubt. It's my question for sure. It probably is Sai's question, although he's very holy, so he probably
very holy, Father.
Right, so,
you are right about that.
But the fact is that each one of us is disposed in various ways to our various weaknesses, and so we tend to be inclined to commit the same sins that we committed before, and that's part of human life. And I always tell people, would you rather come up with some new sins that complicate your life further? Let's just say our weaknesses are our weaknesses. And I would say that in the case of a firm purpose of amendment, which you have, and that's for the moment of your confession, you add to that the intention to make use of the means of overcoming sin. And so the key thing there is to persevere in prayer, and that means not to give in to that low-grade discouragement that the devil brings into us, that we know I've sinned now, so now, it's not worth doing anything spiritual until I get to confession. Like, nothing I do is of value to God because I fell, and so what's the point until I get to confession? No. You have to keep your spiritual efforts up, especially when you fall into sin, especially when you have disappointed yourself by failing in the same ways you failed before. The devil wants us to be discouraged. Our Lord wants to encourage us and to bring us forward in the spiritual life. So my key thing there with the perseverance and confession is persevere in prayer, a daily rosary, confident recourse to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, to the Blessed Mother, visiting the Blessed Sacrament, keeping close to our Lord, even when we've offended him. That will be the way in which we'll make true progress. And then getting confession again as soon as we possibly can, because our Lord has no greater desire than to forgive our sins. And you would almost say that he loves our repentance and our going to confession more than he loves our being perfect, because he just keeps forgiving us over and over and over again. And we need to have that trust and confidence, because that's what really will overcome the devil and will give us our grace of perseverance. So I would say daily consistent prayer and perseverance in seeking the grace of the sacrament of penance, and that will get you to the right place. As St. Teresa of Avila said, if a man sins and prays, eventually he'll give up one or the other. So most of our life might be a struggle. We sin, but we still pray. But the point is, don't sin and then stop praying. And, of course, if you pray, you realize you're not going to stop sinning because you're a weak human being. But just keep up the prayer, and you will find finally the victory. It may be, 15 minutes before you die. It may be very soon, like next week, but you've got to keep it up.
Shane, I hope that that's helpful. We'll have to leave it there because, as you can hear, the music is playing. That means we got to take a quick break. Thank you so much for that call. The chaplain is in this hour. If you have a question that you would like to put to a chaplain, this is the hour for you. Might be a question about prayer, might be a question about family, sacraments. Give us a call, 888-318-7884. Keep driving carefully. Those little ones are still out there.
Catholic Answers Live.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture's moral center continues to fly apart, and with every form of deviance publicly aired and celebrated, we have no choice but to equip our kids to understand about such issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level, to meet the world's challenges. Silence can no longer be an option. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging on to the shop at Catholic.com.
The world is changing. The days of picking up a book or popping a DVD or compact disc in the player have given way to the digital age. The good news is that the shop at Catholic.com has joined the digital revolution. Check out the new digital platform at shop.catholic.com, where all of our DVDs, books, and audio products are now available in digital form for you to purchase and download at your convenience, anywhere you go. For that matter, anywhere in the world. We've got hundreds of offerings, so visit shop.catholic.com today and check out our selection. That's shop.catholic.com.
Our goal in this life is to become saints in the next.
Who do you know who's closest to being a saint?
Share with us on tomorrow's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Now let's return to Catholic Answers Live with Cy Kellett.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father Hugh Barbour is our chaplain, and he is our guest. And he's for reals our chaplain. He celebrates Mass for us every morning.
For real.
For reals. Oh, you're supposed to say for real? That's the old way. The new way we say for reals.
No, I'll keep for real. Thank you.
All right. I was just, I was trying to be spontaneous like the kids because it's Halloween today.
Okay.
Trying to be all cool and funky. No? Just stop
Just
that.
milk chocolate. That's all
Just
I say. Milk chocolate.
I don't
Forget
care if it's
everything
milk
else.
chocolate. Any kind of chocolate. I
Just
don't
milk
care.
chocolate, okay?
Do you prefer milk chocolate with nuts or something else in it, or just give me the straight chocolate?
If to be honest, I would just say the straight chocolate.
Really?
But if I have to take it with nuts, I will.
I like a crunch with it. I like a little crunch with
okay,
my,
fine. You know,
with
it's
my
all
chocolate. Sometimes I like chocolate that melts in my mouth, not in my hands too. And do you know what that is?
M&Ms.
You've been out of the cloister too long.
What is that?
That you're so worldly now.
But I grew up with that M&Ms. That slogan was long before I entered the Abbey.
888-318-7884, the number. The chaplain is ready here to talk with you. Stephen in East Jordan, Michigan, listening on 90.9 FM. You are up with Father Hugh Barbour. Your question, please.
Hey, Father Hugh.
Hey, Stephen.
I didn't catch the name of the apologist or theologian that's speaking next to you, but hello to you as well. Happy.
Thanks. I'm Cy, and I'm neither an apologist nor a theologian. I am, what would you say my title
is? A radio hack.
Radio hack. There you go. Radio hack. Stephen, your question for Father.
Hopefully this quick one is a preamble. I was trying to evangelize, and I Google searched, All Saints Eve, and I saw the term halamas with the number 1 above it, where you can click it and see all the references. And they said All Saints Eve has a vigil high mass, just like Easter or Christmas, and then a following mass the next day on All Saints Day, and that they would have 2 different readings in the cylindrical calendar, but that either mass would meet the requirement as a Catholic.
Right. But that's the vigil of All Saints Day. That there's an evening mass and then there's the mass on the day. But the term halamas is actually technically for All Saints Day itself. That is the day itself, not Halloween itself. It means the mass of all hallows. Hallows means saints. And so halamas refers like you have Christmas, that's the mass of Christ's birth. You have Michaelmas, the Mass of St. Michael on his feast day. You have Candlemas, the feast of the presentation of the Lord. These are Old English expressions. But Hallowmas is the feast of All Saints' Day. And then Halloween would be the complementary expression, which means the vigil or the evening before Hallowmas. So that's just an Old English expression, but we don't use it anymore.
It sounds like Steve is satisfied with that answer, so we will leave
I
it there.
hope so.
Thanks,
God
Steve.
bless you.
I kind of like those Old English terms. I don't know why. It gives you a kind of feeling of...
Well, they keep them up in England. Like in the schools, they have like Michaelmas term.
Oh.
Yeah. They have they name the different parts.
But they still have a queen, too.
There's also Lammas for St. Lawrence's Day and whatnot. They have all these different days, They do have a queen, yes. Indeed, they do.
Yeah.
Or a monarch. Yeah.
No, it's a queen right now.
Right.
I mean, I don't
monarch is the point. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yes. She's the... God save the queen.
She's
Let's
it.
go
I
to
mean,
Tommy
look at
in the
little
Bronx.
Megan.
I don't
She
know.
had to get baptized and confirmed and receive communion in order to marry Harry.
Megan, who's the wife of Harry.
Right, but I mean,
like
that's
a
something
prince and a
significant.
princess. Yeah.
Wouldn't happen in our country. Can you imagine the Obamas requiring somebody to be baptized in order to marry their daughter? No. Or even the Trumps? No. In fact, the Trumps, they convert to Judaism.
Well, there's a religious role for the monarch.
The Jews, right, exactly. And that's something that should not be forgotten. It's not just a joke.
You and I have talked about this before. That Queen Elizabeth,
Irish types, they're just always making fun
stop
of you.
picking on the Irish. I will not accept it. But that Queen Elizabeth, she gives a beautiful Christmas message
Always
every
with
year.
a religious tone that is
A
far more
religious
religious
meditation. Yes.
than some clerics in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, well, that's probably right. Yeah.
Let's just say, watch it this year on Christmas.
Yeah, you should watch
Christmas
the Queen's
Day,
Christmas message.
Go
It's
online
beautiful.
and look for Queen's Christmas message, like in the afternoon sometime, and listen to it. It's always edifying.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Tom, I don't know how. I have no idea how
Join
we
your
got
Canadian
off on
friends.
that.
We got there somehow.
We got there somehow. Tommy in the Bronx, listening on EWTN. Your question for Father.
Hi, Father. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Tommy.
Tonight.
Great.
Just want to say great facts and great information from you, gentlemen, tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So basically, I don't really know how to phrase this question or anything, but I've been pondering on it for quite a while now. And, I know all, what the church teaches on, getting married before you live together, and all that stuff, and premarital sex. I understand all that. But the one thing I can't get wrap my head around is the fact that, God creates life regardless of the procreation act, so to speak. So in other words, somebody outside of the church, can have a beautiful kid and grow up and everything like that and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to see, what do you think God's reasoning and what do you think God's plan is when he does create beautiful life? It's almost like saying, something good happens out of something bad. You know what I mean?
Well, definitely, it's something good out of something bad. That is the sinful condition of the parents is not, in the case of an individual human being, is not the explanation of their existence. That is, God is the author of nature. He's the creator of our human nature, and therefore of procreation, and therefore of all the conditions for procreation. And so he doesn't cancel that or end it when those powers of human nature are misused. So someone commits fornication and they conceive a child. Well, God is faithful in all his works, and he has been faithful to the human race that when someone is conceived in natural intercourse, a life is created. That we're unfaithful in observing his law and doing that within lawful marriage is another issue, but God is always faithful. So whatever human beings do, God always does his part. And the beautiful child that comes forth from an illicit union is actually God's saying, I'm doing what I have determined to do in creation, but then you folks have to bring your behavior and your comportment and your education of this child up to the level of what I teach you. So there's no problem with that, that God doesn't withhold the created immortal soul from a body of a child because the child was not conceived in lawful wedlock. Just like the same thing, extreme case, one you don't mention, but more common now are all these little children that are conceived by in vitro fertilization.
Yeah.
All right, if they continue to be conceived and grow, they're real human beings, because God, as the author of nature, he doesn't turn back on his laws. He just says, no, I'll do my part, but then the human race needs to do its part, if that makes sense.
It made sense to me. Tommy, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that answer, and that sheds a little more light on it for me. Just quick follow-up if we can. So basically I heard in the Bible once, I guess it was Leviticus, when the Lord said, I have known you before you were born.
Mm-hmm.
So if he knows that the individual soul is going to be born, he also knows, like, what kind of act is going to make that, child conceive.
Yeah, of course.
So it's kind of like he already knows bad stuff is going to happen to create this child, and it's hard to, just doing a lot of thinking, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think you're thinking profoundly, and you're asking a lot of the right questions, but you have to consider that God's permission that certain good things occur, even though people do things that are wrong. Like everything about, like the couple who are committing fornication or adultery, everything about their action is good, except for the fact that their relationship is not within the law of God. but all the natural aspects, the physical aspects. I mean, in order to follow through with what you're thinking, you would say, well, God would have to subtract pleasure from the sexual act when it's not performed morally. And he would have to take away the power of the criminal to wield a weapon with his arm or whatever because he was not using it for legitimate self-defense or for something else. So God, as the governor of creation, the laws that are there in creation that give us our freedom and our ability to act, they are related to our own moral responsibility. And God will accommodate those things, and he will even correct or heal the things that go wrong with our misuse of his gifts. But he doesn't annul them because he's the creator. He doesn't stop or destroy what he's made. He continues to support it.
Tommy, thanks very, very much for that call. And for those, I feel like we should give Tommy a nickname. I feel like people from the Bronx all have nicknames, but I don't know. I'll have to work on something like that. But Tommy, thanks very much for the call.
God bless you, Tommy.
And it does, in fact, seem that God really likes human beings and really, really likes babies, because there's a lot of us, and we just keep making more. And
speak for yourself. You're a baby?
No, I'm not a baby. I actually, now that you say
I'm
it,
just
in some ways,
said a lot of us.
You called me a radio hack. Now you're calling me, come on, father. And it wasn't my phone going off in the middle of a.
I'm sorry.
I thought Chris Check was going to come in here, but I guess he's not coming in.
It was someone from the Abbey too.
So
I'll
just say it, since Chris Check is not coming in the studio. We're having this fantastic getaway to talk about the faith, to share the faith, and to have a kind of vacation experience on a cruise to the Caribbean or the Caribbean, one of those two.
And people need to go on it, because my successor as prior of St. Michael's Abbey is the chaplain, Father Chrysostom Bear.
Yes.
Who's like a barrel of laughs and a lot of fun.
And Chrysostom means golden, what does it mean?
Golden-tongued.
Golden-tongued. So he's going to be speaking
and a lot of and wonderful,
celebrating
wonderful
masses
apologists
with us
and everything. You need to go.
People should go on. But the thing is, on Friday, All Souls Day, the big sale is over, and you're getting $150 off your ticket.
That doesn't sound right.
Everybody, what?
To stop.
On All Souls Day to stop
discounts on
We'll
All
talk
Souls
to
Day.
Chris
That
Check about it.
doesn't
I don't know
make
how
sense.
he makes these decisions, but All Souls Day is the last day of the say. It's February 10th through the 17th. Leave from Fort Lauderdale, see all these beautiful sights, get talks on Christopher Columbus and Cortez, and talks on all kinds of elements of the Catholic faith. Tim Staples is going to be there. Carlo Broussard's going to be there. Chris Check. They're all giving talks. I'm going to be there. Of course, I'm not giving
daily
talks.
mass and confession.
Right. I'm carrying the bags, though, so I'm doing my part. Just come on this thing. Go to CatholicAnswersCruise.com. CatholicAnswersCruise.com and get your $150 off before or between now and All Souls Day.
Great.
Hello, this is Archbishop Alexander Sample of the Archdiocese of Portland in Oregon. Keep that dial right here on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their faith and values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
It's the start of a new day for Morning Catholic Radio.
Isn't it the case that when you're stirring food in a pot, it burns less, because it's not just sitting there?
What about your forearms? You get some nice buff forearms when you're doing that stirring.
But let me say, I can totally get this for you, Gloria. You don't need any help stirring the pot.
You know, you all make it so easy for me.
Morning Glory, Catholic from the start. Weekday mornings, 7 Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. The chaplain is in. The chaplain is Father Hugh Barbour. He speaks both Italian and English and a bunch of other languages, like 40 or something. I don't know. Am I exaggerating?
Wabat Yabumabin.
Oh, well, what is that thing that they used to do on public television when we were kids?
Yabis. Abab.
I'm going to say something in Italian for you. I'm going to say Darren. We're talking about nicknames for Tommy, because from the Bronx, you feel like you should have a nickname. But I have a nickname for Darren. Capo del Dipartimento Radiofonico. What do you think of that?
That's precise Italian.
Was it?
Not much of a nickname.
Well, yeah.
Head of the radiophonic department.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's what that's my new nickname for Darren.
Capo.
I just wanted to throw out. Well, we'll just call him Capo for short.
Capo.
Yeah, right. But I wanted to
Chef
try some
Capo.
Italian out on you.
Cabeza.
I love Google. Tony in Anaheim, you are up next with our chaplain. Your question.
Tony.
Hi, yeah, I wanted to ask Father if he might help me through Matthew 12, verses 43 through 45. I was wondering, in this reading, is there a possibility of interpreting those verses that maintaining one's home in a state of clutter or disorder could invite the demonic or anything of a diabolical origin?
Well, I would. My immediate reaction to that is that I wouldn't relate this question precisely to Matthew 12 and the text you mentioned, 43 to 45 and 43. I would 29. I wouldn't relate it to that directly, but I would say that any habitual disorder in our lives which causes us discouragement or hinders us in doing the things that we need to do, whether for ourselves or others, can certainly be something which the devil is encouraging or promoting. I don't think we need to dramatize it, but let's just say one does come across extreme cases of disorder, and there are psychological and moral effects on people. So I would just say, yes, it's good to keep things in good order, tidy, in order to serve God and our neighbor more faithfully. But I wouldn't be quick to assert demonic intervention when we're very messy. I think that might be a heavy burden to put on somebody who's just disordered, So you don't tell your kids, the devil's going to get you because your room's a mess. But you have a spiritual intelligence that realizes that the devil will make use of any disorder in order to slow down or discourage us from doing the good that we need to do.
Okay, Tony?
Okay, very good. Thanks
God
for your
bless
help.
you, yeah.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Peace.
Paul in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. You are up next. Paul, your question for Father Hugh Barbour.
Hi, hello, Father Hugh. Hello, Sai.
Hello,
First of
Paul.
all, I love the new music. The music is awesome.
Thank
it
you.
Makes a smile on my face every time I hear it.
The capo of the radio department just thrust his two fists into the air in triumph because he's the guy that got that music there. Thanks,
But
Paul.
he did the fist, but he didn't take a knee, so it's okay.
Oh, my God. Paul, please give Father a question. He needs something to occupy him.
Sorry.
Oh, Father, my question is, how do you discern between two good things in life? So essentially, I want to be a full-time missionary for a Catholic lay community, but also I'm choosing between that and continuing my plans of continuing to provide for my family and commit to eventually marry and make a family and all that. So how do you discern between the two good things? And essentially, me being missionary would forego a lot. Will lead me to do a lot of financial sacrifices, but that's something that I feel like I'm called to do. However, I also feel like I'm called to, continue my current plans in life and continue to provide and get married and whatnot. And how do I discern between the two things?
Okay, now, are you married now?
No, I'm not, Father.
Okay, so you're just thinking that as something as a plan down the line. I would say the first thing you do is that you give thanks to God that he's given you a number of good things to do. That's point number one. Thank him for the fact that you have all these good choices to choose between. Secondly, you thank him for your freedom, whereby he determines in his wisdom that whatever free decision you make in order to serve him that isn't a sin is pleasing to him. And we're discerning God's will sometimes we're thinking, well, how can I figure out what God wants the most? And you kind of go back and forth, and then you think, well, maybe it's the thing that's hardest, maybe it's the thing that's most generous, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Well, anyone who's made a final choice in life, marriage or religious life or whatever it is, knows that you can't foresee the exquisite joys and exquisite pains that will accompany any choice you make. So you can't foresee and go, I'll take the harder road because it's more pleasing to God, because you have no idea. You may pick something that looks easier and it may be harder in the end. You just don't know. So what you do is you pick between the things that move your heart, and you choose freely after discerning in prayer, and whatever you actually choose to do, that will be the will of God. People say, well, how do I know what God's will is? You say, well, you know because you chose freely in uprightness, and so that's God's will. Because, God governs the universe and he governs all his creatures according to the nature which he gave them. So he governs the fish and the birds and the trees and everything according to their particular nature. Well, human beings he governs according to their free and intelligent nature. So when you freely consider and ponder and reason about and come to a decision about what you're going to do, that is his will. And then sometimes, granted, extraordinarily, God gives some special sign or whatever, but really and truly, discerning God's will means using your freedom in a way which is in accordance with his commandments. And that doesn't mean that you have to pick the thing that doesn't please you, that's more difficult or harder or whatever. You have to pick the thing that the Lord moves your heart to do, which gives you the greatest joy and expectation of serving and pleasing him. Okay?
Okay, Paul?
Just a follow-up question.
Sure.
Do you also consider the people that get affected by your choices?
Of course, you can consider all of that, but again, you can't consider their lives as being determining you. So if you've got a mother who's going to say she's going to throw herself off a cliff if you go off and be a missionary, you can't always keep that as a reason. So it depends upon that. It has to be a reasonable expectation of their part regarding your choices. But if you're an unmarried man now without a wife and children, so you don't have a lot of obligations, and so you have a certain degree of freedom, maybe which is greater. Okay.
All right, Paul, we'll leave it there. Thanks. I hope that was helpful. I want to get to Robert in San Antonio, listening on 89.7 FM, Guadalupe Radio. Robert, your question for Father Hugh Barbour.
Yeah, hi. My question is it allowable to combine the ordinary and the extraordinary forms of Mass?
You mean like in the same Mass?
Yes.
Like elements of one
what
to the other?
What you might call a hybrid.
Right. Well, that's an interesting question because, strictly speaking, no. But if you look at the kind of the non-legal, non-juridical writings of Pope Benedict, who brought in the Summorum Pontificum and all that, he tends to think that gradually the two rites will influence each other towards something which is a balance. So it's hard to imagine that happening without taking elements from one or the other. I think what's important is that you take elements which are permitted in one form or the other. And a lot of people that follow the extraordinary form, they're extremely rigid about certain things you cannot do, like the people can't participate, or they're not to make vocal responses. There's some places like that, or there can be no offertory procession or prayer of the faithful, which actually you could actually justify in the old Mass. And people get mad at me for even mentioning these things because they want it to be just like the low Mass that they experienced or their parents experienced, and they don't want to consider any liturgical renewal at all. On the other hand, you can't mix the rites in a sense that you do something within a rite that was never foreseen in that particular use.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's very important not to clutter up the Tridentine rite, the traditional rite, with Novus Ordo stuff. I mean, like you wouldn't be using the other Eucharistic prayers, you wouldn't be doing other things, you wouldn't be doing altar girls and all that sort of thing. But on the other hand, the fact is that the Church's sense is that eventually the two would converge and there would be a single Roman rite once again, because it's frankly a little weird that we have two forms of the Roman rite. So we need to get over that eventually, but that may happen, years from now.
that work for you, Robert?
The pastor combines the two and has a mass for us that way.
But can you give an example of what you mean by combines the two? Because I'm wondering if it may be Father.
It may be legitimate.
Okay, combining the two. Well, we don't have the prayers at the foot of the altar. We have the Novus Ordo beginning of the Mass, and then at the offertory, the priest goes up to the high altar, and he says everything in English through the whole Mass, and then we have.
But he's turned his.
We have communion at the altar at the communion rail.
Well, maybe he's doing the new Mass in a traditional form, because you can do the new Mass facing east, facing away, and kneeling for communion, and with all of that. So maybe he's doing the new Mass in a traditional form, like we do here at Catholic Answers most days.
Oh, I see. In other words, so we receive only under one species at the communion rail.
That's perfectly okay in the new Mass, and facing east is okay in the new Mass. And so maybe it looks like the old Mass for part of the Mass, and so you're thinking that he's mixing them, but maybe he's just doing the new Mass in a traditional form.
Robert, we have to leave it there because there's the music.
God bless you.
Oh, that was interesting clarification there at the end. Father, on this eve of All Hallows, may we have your blessing.
Okay. Benedictio Dei omnipotentis Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos et maneat semper.
Amen.
Amen. Go in peace now, and God bless you.
Thank you, Father, and you as well, and your spirit, I suppose I should say. But should we pray for the dead, Father? Just want to get a clarification from you before we go.
Of course.
Okay.
A lot.
I know.
Like
pray for the dead. That's what these days are about.
So I'll add to the blessing, eternal rest granted them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May their souls, the souls of all the faithful departed, the mercy of God, rest in peace.
Amen. Father Hugh Barbour is our chaplain, and we're awful happy about that. We'll see you next time, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.